What happens when Hollywood royalty walks into what should be a simple morning interview and finds himself ambushed by a host with an agenda? It only took 47 seconds for Savannah Guthrie to ignite a firestorm that would end with Clint Eastwood walking off the Today Show set, leaving the entire panel in shocked silence. The morning started like any other on the Today Show. The lights were bright, the coffee was flowing, and the crew was setting up for what producers thought would be a standard celebrity interview. Clint Eastwood, the legendary actor and director, had agreed to come on the show to discuss his latest film project. He walked onto the set with that familiar stoic presence, the kind of quiet confidence that comes from decades in the spotlight. Savannah Guthrie sat across from him, flanked by Hoda Kotb and Al Roker. The cameras started rolling, and what happened next would become one of the most talked about moments in morning television history. Savannah started with what seemed like a simple question. Clint, thank you so much for being here. Your new film has been generating a lot of buzz, but I want to start by talking about something else. Your political views have always been, shall we say, controversial. Do you stand by some of the things you've said in the past? Clint shifted in his seat, clearly caught off guard. Well, Savannah, I thought we were here to talk about the film. That's what my publicist told me this interview was about. But Savannah wasn't backing down. She leaned forward with a smirk that suggested she'd been planning this moment. Oh, we'll get to the film, but our viewers deserve to know who they're supporting when they buy a ticket. You've made some pretty divisive statements over the years. Don't you think you owe the public an explanation? Hoda glanced nervously at Al, who looked down at his notes, clearly uncomfortable with where this was heading. Clint remained calm, his voice steady. I've never hidden who I am or what I believe. I've always been honest with people. But I came here in good faith to talk about a project that a lot of talented people worked very hard on. If you want to have a political debate, maybe we should do that another time. Savannah laughed, and it wasn't a friendly laugh. It was the kind of laugh that said she thought she had the upper hand. Another time? Clint, you're 80-something years old. You've had plenty of time to clarify your positions. Maybe the problem is that you know your views don't hold up under scrutiny. The audience gasped. Even Hoda looked shocked. Savannah, Hoda interjected softly. Maybe we should... But Savannah cut her off with a raised hand. No, Hoda. I think this is important. Clint Eastwood has used his platform for years to push certain narratives, and I think he should be held accountable. Clint's jaw tightened. You could see the frustration building behind his eyes, but he kept his composure. Accountable? For having opinions? For exercising my right as an American citizen to speak my mind? That's rich coming from someone who does exactly that every single morning on national television. Oh, so now you're attacking me? Savannah shot back, her voice rising. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You can't handle being questioned. You can't handle someone pushing back against your outdated worldview. Al finally spoke up, trying to defuse the situation. Hey folks, maybe we should all take a breath here, and... Savannah ignored him completely. Her focus was locked on Clint like a predator zeroing in on prey. You know what I think? I think you're scared. I think you're scared that the world has moved on without you, that your way of thinking is dying out, and you can't stand it. The studio fell silent. Everyone could feel the tension crackling in the air like electricity before a lightning strike. Clint sat back in his chair and looked at Savannah with an expression that was equal parts disappointment and disbelief. Scared? No, Savannah, I'm not scared. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed that you invited me here under false pretenses. I'm disappointed that you think ambushing a guest is good journalism. And I'm disappointed that you're so focused on tearing people down that you've forgotten what honest conversation looks like. Honest conversation? Savannah scoffed. You want to talk about honesty? Let's talk about how you've spent years. No, Clint interrupted firmly. We're not doing this. I've been in this industry for longer than you've been alive. I've sat through thousands of interviews, and I've always tried to be respectful, even when I disagreed with the interviewer. But this isn't an interview. This is an ambush. This is you trying to score points with your audience by making me look bad. Hoda tried again to intervene. Clint, please, I think what Savannah is trying to... But Clint raised a hand gently. Hoda, you seem like a nice person. And Al, you too. But your colleague here has made it clear she's not interested in having a real conversation. She's interested in a spectacle. Savannah's face flushed red. A spectacle? You're the one making this difficult. All I'm asking for is some basic accountability. Accountability, Clint repeated slowly, letting the word hang in the air. You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. Accountability isn't about gotcha journalism or trying to humiliate someone on live television. It's about honest dialogue and mutual respect. Two things that seem to be in short supply here this morning. The camera operators didn't know where to focus. The producers in the control room were likely panicking. This was live television going completely off the rails. Savannah leaned back and crossed her arms. You know what? I think our viewers can see exactly what's happening here. I ask you some tough questions. Questions that need to be asked, and you fall apart. You can't handle it. That was the moment something shifted in Clint's eyes. He'd been patient. He'd tried to de-escalate. But there was a limit to what anyone should have to tolerate. Fall apart, Clint said quietly, his voice dropping to a near whisper that somehow carried more weight than shouting ever could. Savannah, I've worked with some of the greatest talents in Hollywood. I've directed films that have won Academy Awards. I've been in this business for over 60 years, and in all that time, I've never encountered someone so desperate to prove themselves superior that they'd sacrifice basic human decency to do it. How dare you? Savannah snapped. I'm doing my job. I'm asking the questions that matter. No, Clint said, shaking his head slowly. You're playing to the cameras. There's a difference. A good journalist asks tough questions with the goal of getting to the truth. You're asking questions designed to make yourself look good and me look bad. That's not journalism. That's performance art. Al shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Listen, everyone, I think we're all getting a little heated here. Maybe we should take a commercial break and... I don't need a commercial break, Savannah interrupted sharply. I need Clint Eastwood to answer the question. Do you or do you not stand by the controversial statements you've made over the years? Clint stared at her for a long moment. The silence stretched out uncomfortably. Finally, he spoke. I stand by my right to have opinions. I stand by my right to express those opinions. And I stand by my decision not to be interrogated by someone who clearly has no interest in anything I actually have to say. So you're running away, Savannah said with a triumphant smile. You're running away because you can't defend yourself. Clint stood up slowly, carefully removing his microphone. I'm not running from anything, Savannah. I'm walking away from a situation that has become untenable. There's a difference. And if you can't see that difference, then I feel sorry for you. Hoda looked horrified. Clint, please, don't go. I'm sure we can... But Clint gently placed his microphone on the chair. Hoda, you seem like a genuinely good person. I hope you find yourself on a show someday where that goodness is valued over cheap theatrics. Savannah wasn't done. Even as Clint started to walk away, she kept pushing. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You can't handle criticism. You can't handle being challenged. Clint paused and turned back to face her one last time. Criticism? Is that what you call this? Savannah, I've faced real criticism in my career. I've had my films torn apart by reviewers. I've had my acting questioned, my directing questioned, every choice I've ever made questioned. And you know what? I listened. I learned. I grew. But this isn't criticism. This is cruelty disguised as journalism. The audience was completely silent now. You could have heard a pin drop in that studio. "You think you're being brave," Clint continued, his voice calm but firm. "You think you're speaking truth to power, or whatever phrase is popular these days, but all you're really doing is demonstrating that you have no idea what real conversation looks like. You've confused confrontation with courage." Savannah's face was now bright red. "Get out then. If you can't handle a real interview, then leave." "I am leaving," Clint said simply. "But not because I can't handle your questions. I'm leaving because I respect myself too much to participate in whatever this is." Al finally found his voice again. "Clint, on behalf of the show, I apologize. This got out of hand." Clint nodded at Al. "I appreciate that, Al. I really do. You seem like one of the good ones." He glanced at Hoda. "You too, Hoda. But I can't stay here and pretend this is okay. I can't normalize this kind of behavior." He started walking toward the edge of the set. The cameras followed him, unsure of what else to do. Producers were scrambling. This was unprecedented, but Savannah couldn't let it go. "You're proving my point. You're proving that you can't handle being held to account." Clint stopped one more time. He didn't turn around. He just spoke over his shoulder. "Savannah, I've been held to account my entire career. By audiences, by critics, by the people who matter. But I won't be held hostage by someone who mistakes aggression for intelligence." And with that, he walked off the set. The cameras swung back to the panel. Savannah sat there, trying to maintain her composure, but you could see the cracks forming. Hoda looked devastated. Al looked angry, though he was trying to hide it. Savannah addressed the camera directly. "Well, there you have it, folks. Clint Eastwood, unable to answer simple questions about his past statements, has chosen to walk off our show." Hoda finally spoke up, and there was an edge to her voice that viewers had never heard before. "Savannah, I don't think that's a fair characterization of what just happened." Savannah whipped her head toward Hoda. "Excuse me?" "I said that's not fair," Hoda repeated, more firmly this time. "You ambushed him. We all knew this interview was supposed to be about his film, and you turned it into something else entirely." Al nodded in agreement. "Hoda's right. That wasn't journalism. I don't even know what that was." Savannah's mouth fell open. "Are you seriously taking his side right now? Both of you?" "There are no sides," Al said quietly. "Or there shouldn't be. We're supposed to have conversations with our guests, not put them on trial." The control room was desperately trying to cut to commercial, but the damage was already done. The tension on set was palpable, and it was all playing out live for millions of viewers to see. Savannah looked directly into the camera. "We need to take a break. When we come back, we'll have our cooking segment." But as the show cut to commercial, everyone in that studio knew that something had fundamentally broken. This wasn't just a bad interview. This was a moment that would define how people saw the show, the host, and the nature of modern media discourse. In the hallway behind the set, Clint Eastwood was being approached by various producers and assistants, all apologizing, all trying to convince him to come back. But he just shook his head politely. "I appreciate the apologies," he told them, "but some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. That wasn't an interview. That was an attack. And I'm too old to pretend otherwise, just to make everyone comfortable." One of the younger producers, clearly upset, asked him, "What should we have done differently?" Clint thought for a moment. "You should have told your host that getting the truth from someone requires respect. You can ask hard questions without being cruel. You can challenge someone's views without attacking their character. That's the difference between good journalism and what just happened in there." Back on set, during the commercial break, the atmosphere was toxic. Savannah was defending herself to anyone who would listen. "I was doing my job. Someone has to ask the tough questions." But Hoda wasn't having it. "Tough questions? Savannah, you insulted his age. You called his views outdated. You basically accused him of being a coward. That's not tough questioning. That's just being mean. Al chimed in. And you did it all without any regard for the fact that we're supposed to be a team. You made us all look bad. You made the whole show look bad. Savannah stood up abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. You're both just upset because you don't have the spine to hold people accountable. There's that word again, Hoda said softly. Accountable. You keep saying it like it's a shield. But Savannah, what you did in there wasn't about accountability. It was about ego. The stage manager called out that they were back in 30 seconds. Everyone scrambled to their seats, plastering on fake smiles for the camera. But anyone watching could see that something was fundamentally wrong. As the show continued, the cooking segment was awkward. The guest chef could sense the tension and kept looking around nervously as he tried to demonstrate how to make a perfect omelet. Savannah attempted to act normal, asking questions about whisking techniques and the best type of pan to use, but her heart clearly wasn't in it. During another commercial break, one of the senior producers came onto the set. He looked furious. He pulled Savannah aside, and while viewers couldn't hear what was being said, they could see Savannah's face going from defensive to shocked to something like fear. When they came back from that break, it was Al and Hoda who took the lead. Savannah was noticeably quieter, contributing only when directly asked a question. The dynamic had completely shifted. In the final segment of the show, as they were wrapping up, Hoda did something unexpected. She looked directly at the camera and said, I want to take a moment to address what happened earlier. Clint Eastwood is a legend in the entertainment industry, and he deserved better than what he got here this morning. On behalf of the Today Show, I want to apologize. Savannah's head snapped toward Hoda, but she didn't say anything. The shock on her face said everything. Al nodded. Hoda's right. We pride ourselves on being a show where people feel welcome, where conversations can happen in a respectful way. What happened this morning fell short of that standard. The show ended shortly after, and the fallout was just beginning. In the control room, executives were already having emergency meetings. Producers were fielding calls from angry sponsors. And somewhere in New York City, Clint Eastwood was getting on with his day, secure in the knowledge that he'd stood up for himself when it mattered. The green room where guests usually wait before and after their appearances was buzzing with activity. Other guests scheduled for later in the show were nervously asking if they should still appear. Some decided to quietly leave, not wanting to be associated with the controversy. One makeup artist who had worked with both Clint and Savannah over the years was overheard saying, I've done Clint's makeup dozens of times. He's always been nothing but professional and kind. What happened out there, that wasn't on him. That was ambush television, plain and simple. Another crew member added, I've been working on this show for 15 years. I've never seen anything like that. You don't treat guests that way, especially not legends like Clint Eastwood. There's asking tough questions. And then there's what Savannah did. That crossed every line. As word spread through the building, more and more people were coming forward with their opinions. The general consensus among the crew was clear. Savannah had gone too far, and Clint had every right to walk off that set. In a small office down the hall, Clint's publicist was on the phone with various media outlets, all clamoring for a statement. But the publicist kept giving the same answer. Mr. Eastwood has nothing more to say. He believes his actions speak for themselves. And they did speak. They spoke volumes about dignity, about self-respect, about knowing when to walk away from a toxic situation. In a world where everyone seems to think that engaging with every provocation is necessary, Clint had demonstrated that sometimes the most powerful response is simply to remove yourself from the equation. Back in the studio, the crew was breaking down the set for the day. The energy was somber. People who had worked together for years were barely speaking to each other. The show had always prided itself on being a family. But families can fracture, and this felt like a fracture that might not heal easily. Savannah eventually left the building, through a side entrance, avoiding the growing crowd of media that had gathered out front. She said nothing, her face hidden behind large sunglasses, her phone pressed to her ear. Hoda and Al left together, stopping briefly to address the media. "It was a difficult morning," Al said carefully. "We're all processing what happened, and we'll have more to say later." Hoda added, "I just want to say that I have tremendous respect for Clint Eastwood. He's a true professional, and he handled a very difficult situation with remarkable grace." The questions came rapid fire from the reporters. Do you think Savannah went too far? Will there be consequences? Is Savannah being suspended? But Hoda and Al just smiled politely and made their way to their cars. Inside one of the network's conference rooms, executives were watching and rewatching the footage. Every angle, every word, every facial expression was being analyzed. This wasn't just a public relations problem. This was a fundamental question about what the show stood for and who they wanted to be. One executive said, "We can't have our hosts ambushing guests like this. It doesn't matter what their personal feelings are about someone's politics. We invite people onto this show, and that comes with an obligation to treat them with basic respect." Another added, "The problem is that she thought she was doing the right thing. She thought she was being a hero, holding someone accountable. But she completely missed the point. You can challenge people without being cruel." A third executive, looking tired and frustrated, said, "What kills me is that Clint is right. This wasn't journalism. It was theater. Bad theater. And now we're all paying the price for it." The footage showed the moment when Clint removed his microphone with such deliberate care, the way he placed it on the chair, not throwing it down in anger, not making a dramatic gesture, just calmly and quietly removing himself from the situation. That image was already becoming iconic. One of the younger executives in the room said, "You know what's interesting? He never raised his voice. Not once. He stayed calm the entire time. And somehow, that makes what Savannah did look even worse." "Because it was worse," the senior executive replied. "When you're screaming at someone who's speaking calmly, you're the one who looks out of control. You're the one who looks like the problem. And in this case, that's exactly what happened." The meeting continued for hours, discussing next steps, damage control, potential statements. But everyone in that room knew that no amount of corporate speak was going to fix what had happened. The only thing that might help would be genuine accountability. The real kind, not the performative kind that Savannah had been demanding from Clint. As the day wore on, more details emerged about what had led to the confrontation. Apparently, Savannah had decided at the last minute to change the direction of the interview. The questions she asked hadn't been cleared with producers. They hadn't been shared with Clint's team. It was a unilateral decision to ambush a guest on live television. This revelation made everything worse. It meant that not only had she been aggressive and disrespectful, but she'd also gone rogue, ignoring the basic protocols that exist to ensure interviews go smoothly. She'd put her own agenda ahead of the show, ahead of her colleagues, ahead of everything. In newsrooms across the country, journalists were weighing in on what had happened. Many defended the right to ask tough questions, but even they acknowledged that there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. "You can be tough without being cruel," one veteran journalist said. "You can challenge someone without ambushing them. The skill is in asking questions that get to the truth, not questions that just make you look tough." Another commentator noted, "What's remarkable about Clint's response is that he didn't play the victim. He didn't storm off in anger. He simply stated his position clearly and removed himself from a bad situation. That's not weakness. That's strength." The video of the confrontation continued to circulate. Reaction videos were popping up everywhere. Media analysts were breaking down every moment. And through it all, Clint Eastwood remained silent, letting his actions speak for him. The Today Show would go on. Morning television would continue. But something had changed. A line had been crossed, and everyone had seen it happen in real time. The question now was whether anything would be learned from it, whether this moment would lead to reflection and change, or whether it would just be another controversy that fades with time. But for those who watched Clint Eastwood stand up, remove his microphone, and walk away with dignity intact, the lesson was already clear. You don't have to accept mistreatment. You don't have to participate in someone else's performance. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply walk away. The moment replayed in the minds of everyone who witnessed it. Clint's calm demeanor in the face of Savannah's escalating aggression became the defining image of the entire confrontation. While she raised her voice, he lowered his. While she made accusations, he stated facts. While she attacked, he defended with quiet dignity. Members of the audience who had been present in the studio that morning were already sharing their experiences online. One woman wrote, "I was sitting in the third row. The tension in that room was unbearable. You could feel everyone getting uncomfortable. When Clint stood up to leave, half the audience wanted to applaud him, but we were all too shocked to move." Another audience member shared, "Savannah kept looking at us like she expected us to be on her side. But honestly, most of us were just embarrassed for her. You don't treat a legend like that. You just don't." The stage. Crew had their own stories. A camera operator who had been working the show for over a decade said, "In all my years, I've never seen a host go after a guest like that. We have protocols. We have standards. What Savannah did threw all of that out the window. I kept hoping someone would step in and stop it, but it all happened so fast." A sound technician added, "When Clint removed his mic, he handed it to me so gently. He looked at me and said, 'Sorry about this.' Can you believe that? He was apologizing to us for having to leave. That tells you everything you need to know about the kind of man he is." The makeup artist who had prepared Clint for the interview was particularly upset. He was in such a good mood when he arrived. He was joking with everyone, asking about our families, being genuinely kind. And then to watch him get treated like that on live television, it was heartbreaking. He didn't deserve any of it. Back in the hallways of the studio, the conversations continued. Producers were debating what should have been done differently. "Someone should have cut to commercial the moment it started going south," one said. Another producer disagreed. "And make it look like we're protecting Savannah? No. What happened needed to happen. People needed to see exactly what kind of interviewer she is." The lesson from this morning's confrontation would resonate far beyond the walls of that television studio. It was a reminder that respect matters, that basic human decency matters, that you can disagree with someone's views without dehumanizing them, and that asking tough questions doesn't require cruelty. It was also a reminder that sometimes the most powerful response to mistreatment isn't to fight back or escalate. Sometimes it's to simply stand up, maintain your dignity, and walk away. Clint Eastwood demonstrated that truth in a way that no amount of words could adequately capture. The image of him calmly removing his microphone, placing it carefully on the chair, and walking off that set would become a defining moment, not because it was dramatic or sensational, but because it was dignified. In a world that often rewards outrage and confrontation, Clint chose quiet strength, and that choice spoke volumes.